Ogof is an extraordinary cave in an extraordinary place. It stretches westwards under the remote and rugged moorlands above the Towie Valley in the heart of the Brecon Beacons. With over 17 kilometres of passages, the intricate and difficult route to the end follows a sequence of distinctive places and committing challenges. Unlike most British caves, it is known to millions of non-cavers and appreciated by over 80,000 visitors to the show cave every year. Ogof means below the cave, and was the name of the old farmhouse that was in the position now occupied by the show cave's cafe. The 1912 exploration by the Morgan brothers deserves our respect. They left several mementos of the event in the cave. The uncertainty about what they might find is indicated by them carrying a revolver, just in case. The cave passage they explored, now the show cave, was very uneven, with sandbanks, deep pools and climbs. The candle illumination must have been barely adequate.
The lakes, oh God, they're cold. And you can only try to imagine yourselves in the position of the Morgan brothers, because they crossed it with a coracle. Now they must have been absolutely terrified as to whether they were actually going to sail across the lake to the waterfall, or were they going to sail across the lake and go straight over the waterfall, probably never to be seen again. That third lake is part of the real history of the Morgan brothers and our continuing to keep the caves going, because that is a challenge for anyone.
Following the discovery, the Morgans led tourist trips that must have been adventurous by modern show cave standards. Climbs and swimming were necessary.
But remember here, this has taken millions and millions of years.
The next phase of exploration began in 1937 by Ernest Roberts of the Yorkshire Ramblers and Caving Club. Teams from Yorkshire and the Mendip Exploration Society combined and included Gerard Platten, after whom a chamber deeper in the cave was named 30 years later. Amongst this group was Miss Gwendolyn Coote, a medical doctor, and it is clear from photos and letters that she was an important contributor to their explorations.
In the dark, two shadows in the night, so gentle and so tender that every little word is like a song of sweet delight.
Letters show that friendships were made between the new explorers and the Morgans, and these revived their old enthusiasms to extend the cave.
And every little kiss is like a dream.
By 1938, the Mendip Exploration Society had placed trips to Ogof as an important feature of their meets programme. They were also considering setting up a South Wales branch for the growing number of local enthusiasts.
Whispers in the dark, while stars are in the blue. Upon a night like this, perhaps I'll hear a little whisper.
In the 1940s, the cave was locked and guarded. It was a less than ideal security store for munitions and art treasures. An apparently clandestine visit by J.L. Morgan is still recorded in pencil near Straw Chamber in the 1937 series. Some of the cave formations were broken during the war, and in the following 70 years, less than 1 centimetre of regrowth has taken place.
My first impression was, wow, just how big they were, and really just how lucky I was to go into the caves when I was so young. And I think it was from that first trip into the caves that I developed a real love of caving and everything that went with it. My main memory is sand. Sand was everywhere.
The Morgans first entered the cave to find out where the water came from. Modern explorers can only do this safely when the water levels are low enough. In flood, the river is an impossible challenge. The river cave is a journey into geology. The water is flowing through the oldest of the limestone beds that can easily allow caves to develop. The rock levels are thin and grey, forming impressive ledges and bridges. The rocks here are particularly impressive because of their colonies of coral fossils. The passage is divided up by ledges made of less soluble, more resistant rock. For normal cavers, this is as far as they can go. The passage continues as an 18-metre sump through to the Battle of Britain series.
Do you mind taking a photo? That was my first time diving in down near Ogof. Been cave diving for about 6 months, if that. It's still fairly new. I've been caving for about 12 years before that.
Some extra light.
It's fairly high flow compared to what I've been used to in little Mendip sumps. So we dived in through the Resurgence, quite a short sump, 4 feet of visibility, something like that. High flow, basically walk through, pulling yourself through. It rises up at the end and pops up out into the cave.
There's a decent amount of flow in the bag on the back.
A canal section where there's relatively limited airspace. There's a couple of ducts with sort of 3-4 inches of airspace. And I couldn't touch the bottom anymore. So, with the weight of the cylinders, I found myself sinking. With nothing to breathe from and quite a lot of weight, it was rather interesting trying to hang on to the side and get through.
And I'll stay here while you distribute the lights.
Very, very active, being in relatively wet conditions. Through to the waterfall, which was a pretty impressive chamber. Pretty windy in there, there's a lot of water coming down. You can sort of get a feel for what's formed that cave and going to continue to form it. It's a very exciting place, yeah, it's definitely very alive. Got kitted up to come out through the other sump.
Have you got the video camera?
We got into the water, went in for a short distance to a slot, a sort of vertical slot down. It's poor visibility, reasonable flow coming out of it. It's always a good experience afterwards, isn't it? At the time, it was also very, very good.
"100 years after their discovery, the lakes have not lost their challenging psychological impact on cavers in Ogof. Following heavy rain, they rise to block access to passages beyond the show cave. The likely cause lies below in the Battle of Britain series. The main river surges into a tiny sump passage, and in flood this backs up. During rare storm events in winter, when the show cave is closed, lake levels can rise up to 8 metres, submerging the railings near the parting of the ways. Water also backs up towards Cauldron Chamber, flooding the viewing area above Lake 1.
It really wakes you up very quickly when it's flooded. From the first moment you're in there, you're swimming and you're deep and you're cold and it's flowing quite quickly. And in some ways I really like that about the cave, because it feels serious from the very start and you've got to put effort into it. The water's getting higher and higher and you're getting colder and colder and the shock starts to kick in. It feels like your eyebrows are going higher and higher up your head until the point where you're completely swimming. You've got to hold on to the roof with your hands and try and push yourself across. I just find that really good fun. I think it's exhilarating and it's a good challenging start.
My first caving trip, though, I was doing about 10 or 11 or so. I went in with my uncle, Ashford Price, who's one of the chambers is named after him, and I must admit I loved it. I couldn't wait to go further in. In fact, my father was almost pulling me out there towards the end. When you go through the small little black tube, and then wham, you've got that magnificent formation covered in curtains. It's got everything, straws alongside it, the curtain, the colours. And just to the right of it, a huge sump. For anybody that's on their first caving trip, as I was going back to the 50s, you just simply never forget it.
The 1937 series was the first major cave system with so much variety and beauty discovered in South Wales. It has many unique features. Modern cavers pass through it quickly to reach further into the cave, often missing the natural wonders that are well worth stopping to see. Many parties never see the siphon. They pass it when it's dry. But about every 20 minutes, a spectacular torrent flows. To the uninformed, this sudden flood can be quite unnerving. The next part of the journey becomes more awkward, but with a constant guiding cold draft.
As I say, I go in down Ogof mostly to show people the cave because I love it so much. to the straw chamber. I usually go there first because after cloud it's a bit of a letdown, and it shouldn't be because it's a wonderful chamber. And then I'll go through to Corbell's because it's off the beaten track. We've got wonderful little passage. I love crawling through that, the belly crawl. You pop out, see the straws. You've got that horrible squeeze out through into the main chamber. Up the top there, I've just seen that blue formation, which I haven't noticed before in all my trips, and yeah, definitely coming back and look for that one.
Nobody knew what was happening. It was kept very, very quiet, and we only found out because it was released to the press. The difficulty of getting in, because you just could not get in if you were not in the right crowd. We got a trip in, and that was in the April of 1967. Of course, we'd heard all about the Green Canal and the rising and flabbergasm chasm. As we went into the cave, we saw all this wonder for the first time. Being a 19-year-old, going into some fantastic cave like that is a good feeling.
Above the long crawl is a huge depression called the crater. The passages worm their way right under this, as do wriggling cavers.
I was lucky enough to come up to South Wales Caving Club when I was still a medical student a long time ago, but in a very exciting time in the late 60s. I was always aware of how exciting Ogof was. Also, I shared a flat for a couple of years with a very nice chap called Pete Ogden as well as Ken. And Pete had been through the long crawl before the main discovery was made, and he wrote his initials in the sand, P.O. And we're always aware that Pete had got through this crawl, but he never got back to explore it as it was flooded for the next X number of months. And then, of course, the big discovery was made, and Pete's discovery as being the first person to get through the long crawl was lost. But having shared with flat with Pete, I was well aware of this history, which I think got buried in the mists of all the other exciting discoveries. It was then closed for some time because Cardiff University wanted to study the fauna of Ogof, so it was always a little bit, it was somebody else's cave, even though it had been discovered in our backyard. Anyway, we got in, and to actually go in there and in the late 60s, early 70s and see things like flabbergasm was just mind-blowing, and vivid memories of how absolutely fantastic it was. About the long crawl, it wasn't, I didn't find it that bad personally, but I do remember trying to go in there with Neil Jones, who was all 6 foot 6, 7, 8. Poor Neil, just his thighs were too long to actually go around the lots of bends, so poor Neil never got through. Not in my knowledge anyway.
After the confines of the long crawl, it's a relief to stand at the foot of the ladder in Gerard Platten Hall and look ahead into the darkness. The size and antiquity of this new passage is emphasised by by a huge bank of layered meltwater sediments. There is a choice to follow either the upper or lower series, each with its own unique drama. The lower series shows natural landscape design at its most intriguing and unpredictable. There is a fantastical feel to the cave's water-polished and corroded black limestone. The low rumble of a waterfall can be heard in the distance, and from now on, a symphony of water sounds dominates the journey through the lower series. There is also a malevolence linked to evidence of regular and total flooding. In Bakerloo Strait, the walls drip with water and mud, and previous footprints have been washed away, making every visit like the first. Lake Ten is a reminder that the river is active and flowing underneath. Thixotropic Passage is coated floor to ceiling in mud, and once again regularly floods to the roof. Surprisingly, it's also the home of a large colony of worms that seem to survive this flooding activity.
Can you see any worms, Richard?
No worms here.
No.
The abyss is a large chamber that marks the end of the lower route. The way on is upwards, climbing tubes that connect back to the upper series.
Yeah.
One of the walls of the abyss is a mountainous choke called Avalanche Corner. Scratch marks on the rocks are evidence that it's still collapsing.
An ice axe might be more useful on that slope than your hands and feet. At least you can dig in.
The upper series is in great contrast and is spectacular caving. Here a river has left a trunk passage to be adorned by a myriad of calcite formations.
I can see why they call it flabbergasm.
There is a need to move carefully to prevent damage to unique sand, mud and calcite left by water flow. Flabbergasm is renowned for its long straws. These are so fine that they vibrate at the sound of the human voice.
This is the point that's going to go out there. Right there.
Taping routeways is essential work to allow visitors in the future to see the unspoiled cave.
We need more water.
In some areas, the rocks have been washed to clear them of muddier footprints and to restore them to the condition they were in when first discovered.
Well, that's better.
The huge tunnel from Monk Hall to Cloud Chamber is one of the most spectacular passages in Britain. Its size and shape, along with the profusion of decorations, are too much to take in on a single visit. After Cloud Chamber, the water from Cascade Avon makes a noisy arrival. It is a small, modern inlet that drops into the older, larger passage. The upward exploration of this is difficult and uncomfortable caving.
We've got a flat-out crawl in water.
Oh, yuck. Okay.
Our main route is up this climb. And this climb takes us up into Green Canal and into Hanger.
The bag off.
That might help. Oh, these are slippery. Put them back down. It's a bit difficult with the bomb there, it's just slippery, it's sliding everywhere.
Hanger Passage is one important key to unlocking the history of Danarogof's development. It is likely to be the oldest route taken by water from the distant sinks high on the moors to the west of the Towie Valley. The largest of these is Sinkergeith. During the thousands of years of their formation, these abandoned passages have started to break down and become choked by rock collapses and muddy infill. On many of the boulders, the mud gives the appearance that the water has only just drained away. But in fact, this probably happened over 10,000 years ago.
So there must be a drain out below it, is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Or maybe some water's coming down here as well. Looks like you have some
Yeah.
texture there.
The hangar area is a focus for further discoveries with a huge potential for links to new passages. Cave explorers have so far been frustrated by blocking boulder chokes. If these could be overcome, it could open up a dry route into the diver-only Mazeways 2 series, a 2-kilometre long extension. Hangar South Passage, which was extended through an easterly choke in 2012, is an ancient passage It could be a route to a long-lost high-level resurgence in the cliffs above the show cave entrance.
The amazing thing is, it's so long and stationary.
The Green Canal is over 5 metres deep and 50 metres long. Swimming or floating along the Green Canal is an essential part of the Ogof experience.
I like these little formations just under the surface as well that kind of look like a little bit of the popcorn type thing.
It is the fastest route into Ogof 3. It is cold, sustained, and has seen its fair share of epic swims and near drownings. As a result, nowadays, assisted techniques are accepted.
Apparently the sun does shine out my arse.
It certainly does.
Ogof can be quite a serious cave. By the time you've done a lot of the cave, you can feel like it's quite an intensive day out. And then of course you get to the Green Canal, you jump in some rubber rings and you push your way down this big steep-sided canal, and it really brings out the kid in me, because how can you take something like that seriously when you're a hardened caver and you're floating down a stream in a big rubber ring, pushing your way off the walls and trying to do it as elegantly as you can, but you really can't. You're really just bouncing around.
Well, this is a very relaxed way of doing it, if you don't want to say so. It seems to be working.
Lovely, very refreshing.
Yeah, you don't want to wear that to the windy way, do you, Rick?
The Go Slower Traverse has a flowing stream, but only in flood conditions. If you were to see it, you're probably stuck in the cave.
The traverses is absolutely excellent. Not too difficult really. Superb, clean, wet rock. Little drops beneath, but not as frightening as in some places.
Rotten Stonehaven has blocks of white honeycomb sandstone littering the passage floor. Somewhat worryingly, more can be seen high up at the top of the 30-metre shaft.
How high do you reckon that is, Richie?
Very high.
I reckon at least 100 feet there.
Close by is Camp Chamber, used in the 1960s to ease exploration and surveying in Ogof 3. Suddenly the passage meets a new stream. This is the water that will be followed to and all the way up through Ogof 3. The sump called the Rising closes the passage down and marks the end of Ogof 2. Most cavers turn round here. Only a few teams a year venture beyond, into the remote and spectacular passages of the Great North Road and the far north of Ogof 3.
What you really need is that to be on the other side. Well, I need some true there.
Alan Coase and Terry Moon climbed above the Rising in 1966, and so Ogof 3 was discovered. The holds are now dangerously slippery. Fixed aids now replace the original unprotected climbing.
Okay, level 3! I've been coming in here for about 30 years and it's probably at least one a year. So yeah, probably at least 30 times I would think.
Windy Way has a particularly cold draft, and snag points that catch gear can make the crawl something of an effort. The descending rift at the end also uses more energy than expected. Still, it's safer with the traverse rope than the old nightmare slippery solo over a horrible deep black hole. The Great North Road starts well as a gravel saunter. But then boulders start to get in the way. Some of the boulders are seriously large and apparently defy gravity. It's best not to have a sense of imagination, just move on and look the other way. White calcite marks a fault that has guided the alignment of the Great North Road. This is a particularly clear example of structural influence on passage development. It is also this fault that has created the enormous sheer west wall of Pinnacle Chamber. There is an impressive phreatic half-tube in the roof of the chamber. It would be nice to assume that all boulders on the floor fell a long time ago. However, the fresh-coloured scars are a product of wall collapse in 2016. It doesn't feel like a place to linger. After all the boulders and breakdown, the perfect roundness of the meanders suddenly appears. Each stage of the downward erosion of the river has left its imprint to create wonderful architecture. The mostest is a high-level oxbow now abandoned by the main stream. The gentle processes of crystal growth have been allowed to experiment with shape and colour. On its floor is a river of crystals. Once used as a shortcut, it is now to be visited only to enjoy the beauty, and with care along a taped path.
A guy called Vin Edwards, who was quite a ferret. He'd see something, he'd go up it, you know, a bit like a clockwork mouse. You just wind him up and he went. We were just sat on the corner, and the choke was opposite, seemed to recollect. And he looked up, and I'm going to go up there. And we thought, go on, and we were all sort of sat around. He climbed up to the top, and he disappeared for a short while, and came back and shouted down, "It goes," or something like that, something corny.
North Avon Climb is the final technical obstacle in the journey.
What's the procedure to get down?
Overpass Passage is characterised by layered fluvio-glacial sands and gravels. Coverings of stalagmite indicate their age. The final 400 metres from the starting gate to the far north choke is a crescendo of size and grandeur. Though the main theme is flat-roofed rectangular passage, massive sand deposits and large rounded gritstone boulders hint of ancient floods.
I've caved all over Europe, all over the world, and to me a trip up to the far north in Dan of Ogof is still one of the finest caving trips anywhere. It's got a bit of everything. You've got the swimming, the crawling, the climbing, and then you've got these amazing huge passages at the end, which are just such an amazing work of nature. It's just such an inspiring, but at the same time very remote place to be. I just love it.
Well, it feels incredibly remote here, and who would have thought when I was a little girl of 12 years old standing at the end of the showcase that I'd eventually be on a 6-hour trip to reach the end of the system. Wonderful end to a beautiful cave.
It's hard work getting here, and When I'm here, the journey back weighs quite heavily because it's 6 hours here and it's going to be 6 hours to get back again. But is it worth it? It's fantastic. It's an incredible place. The final choke is a definitive end to the cave.
I have now fulfilled my caving mission, which I set out about 4 or 5 years ago to actually get here. It looks bigger than it is on the map.
It's a wonderful place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually three-dimensional, it's just like stuck to the rock.
Yeah. Whilst nosing around.
There's plenty of space to get to. Coming out again.
Get down there.
How are you going to get through that
I
thing?
know, but I'm thinking maybe there might be a way in down there.
Well, look at how loose that looks. It looks like I could just kick it and that'll go.
Well, I first came here in about 1986 and I was just so inspired by the size of this passage that it's what's motivated me to dig under the Black Mountain ever since. Because the frustrating thing is you've got this enormous passage that just comes to an end, but inevitably there were miles more of it under the hill. It's just a case of getting into it.
I lose myself in lonely places, on heath and moor and bracken fell, where wind is held in conversation and always has so much to say. And should you ask me, am I at peace there? The answer is, oh yes indeed. I will always need such love